Yo guys, what's up? Welcome to another Hero Spotlight here on YouTube. We'll be talking about the Dreadlord today. The fifth hero in my list of spotlights that I've been doing. There'll be 19 left after this one. The Dreadlord is one of the 4 heroes of the undead race, and I'm going to be talking about him today, doing a deep dive into how he works, how people use him, why people use him, how to counter him, his specific stats, and any tricks and interactions that there might be. You may have started playing Warcraft 3 recently, maybe inspired by the Tyler show match that I recently casted a couple of days ago. And if you did, then maybe this video will help you a little bit to understand about how Warcraft 3 is played at the higher level and kind of how we think about the game and all that. So who's the Dreadlord? The Dreadlord is one of the greatest assets of the undead race, possessing unique skills that fulfill purposes that no other Altar of Darkness hero can. I'm here to induct you into the dark truths of the Dreadlord, so that you too may manipulate your foes unseen. I do wonder why, if they have wings, why are they always walking? But enough about that. Let's talk a little bit about the lore of the Dreadlords in the world of Warcraft 3. Sire Denathrius is an ancient being of untold power. It was he that created the Nathrezim, and the Nathrezim are also known simply as the Dreadlords. These so-called Dreadlords are a cruel race of dark intellect and sorcery, and they embody an unwavering purpose of spreading death across the cosmos. That's nice. They are powerful vampiric beings that prove to be deadly foes on the battlefield. But much of their nefarious work is done unseen, operating as spies and infiltrators to manipulate and undermine their foes from the shadows. They are sometimes even called the Unseen. These cunning, malefic beings once served as the demon Kil'jaeden's most trusted lieutenants. Yet, at Kil'jaeden's request, the vampiric Dreadlords were sent to watch over the Lich King Ner'zhul and ensure that he carried out his orders to sow chaos in the mortal world. It was in fact a Dreadlord that manipulated and goaded young Arthas Menethil to fall into the Lich King's trap, fueling Arthas' thirst for justice and vengeance, only to entrap him later into a vice of no escape. Arthas picked up the cursed rune sword Frostmourne, which merged his consciousness with the first Lich King, Ner'zhul, and he took up the mantle of the Lich King eventually, commanding the Scourge henceforth, of which the Dreadlord in Warcraft 3 are part of that faction. Let's talk a little bit about a short description of the hero's use cases. The Dreadlord excels at taking and protecting early expansions. Going for a Dreadlord as your first hero and opening with an immediate expansion is one of his chief weapons, along with an almost fanatical devotion to defending it with the sleep spell. Dreadlord furthermore can contribute greatly in air versus air battles, with his spell Carrion Swarm and his vampirical aura to boost his side in air versus air battles. His ultimate is one of the best in the game and definitely the best summon in the game. So what are his abilities and what is his ultimate? Let's begin at the start. Carrion Swarm is his first ability. It is a fast, cone-shaped projectile that travels quickly. It's called Carrion Swarm, but I believe it's actually a swarm of bats. Maybe they are bats that prey on carrion, like they're meat-eating bats. But I always thought of carrion more of like as locusts or something, but I could be wrong. Anyway, it's a cone-shaped trajectory AoE that travels quite fast, but does have a travel time. It damages multiple enemies, and it has the advantage over other splash damage spells in that it is 1, able to deal damage to mechanical units, and 2, it's able to deal damage to air units, unlike for instance Tauren Chieftain's Shockwave. And it can also hit, and I know this is going to be completely blowing your mind, it can hit air and mechanical units, combining the 2 unique properties of it. Nice! This makes him great against flying machines, hippogriffs, siege engines, and the like. Carrion Swarm costs 100 mana, which was recently nerfed down from 110 mana 6 years ago. It has a cooldown of 10 seconds, and it has a range of 700. But more about that later, because this could be a little confusing. The range is actually further than 700. The level 1 damage is 75 damage per unit hit, and it also has a unadvertised damage cap. You won't read this in the tooltip. They don't want you to know about it. But don't worry, I'm going to tell you about it. The maximum damage cap is 400. So if he's hitting for 75 and the maximum damage cap is 400, how many units can he hit for 75? Have you been listening? Do you know the number? The answer is 5.33 units could be given the full damage, which means 75 damage to 5 units, and it would then have 25 damage left within the cap to deal to the next. Is that how it always works? Well, no, actually. Carrion Swarm travels like a crescent-shaped wave over enemies, hitting each enemy unit in sequence or simultaneously. This has been the most interesting part of discovering the Dreadlord's mechanics, because he hits units either in sequence or simultaneously. This matters, more about that later. It depends on their position. When 2 units are sharing the same distance to the Dreadlord, they will be hit in unison, and they will share the same amount of applicable damage. Carrion Swarm doesn't know how many units it will hit in advance later down the road. It only knows how much it's hitting at any instance in time. It can only share damage fairly if units are hit simultaneously. Carrion Swarm can recognize simultaneous hits at any point in its trajectory, and magic resistance reduces the damage dealt on units, which also means that the full damage cap hasn't been utilized yet. So if you were to Carrion Swarm 5 footmen, you will pretty much reach your damage cap almost. But if you were to Carrion Swarm 5 heroes or 5 archers, which have magic resistance, you wouldn't be near the damage cap yet, and you could easily hit for another max attributable damage to that single target to a 6th and a 7th target. So the unit cap remembers how much damage is actually dealt, which also includes dead units and magic resistance. And it will be able to do more damage on other targets afterwards. So let's go a little deeper about the nerdy numbers behind Carrion Swarm. If there's 5 units here, and there is 1 unit behind it, it will indeed do 75 damage, 75 damage, 75, 75, 75, and then 25. Kind of like how you would expect. There's 25 damage left to fill out the damage cap, so the 6th unit, which is hit last, will take 25 damage. If you were to put another unit behind the 6th unit, that unit would not take any damage, even though he's clearly in the range of Carrion Swarm. The 7th unit is unscathed. But if you were to have 5 units and then 2 units standing in the same place, and they get hit by Carrion Swarm at the same time, instead of taking 25, one of them, they both take 13 damage. Which also sounds like it's 1 extra damage dealt in total, but that's probably a rounding error, because we do not see decimal points of health and damage in Warcraft 3. So basically, they are sharing the damage because they were hit at the same time. In the 3rd scenario, we've got 4 units standing in sequence, which means Carrion Swarm travels over them. They all take maximum damage of 75. And then there's 2 units standing next to each other. Remember, there was 75 and 25 dealt to those units before when they were standing in sequence, but now they will share 50 each. It makes sense, right? In the 4th scenario, we've got 6 units standing side by side, all getting hit by Carrion Swarm at the same time. 6 units spreading 400 damage means that all of them take 66 damage. So none of the units are taking the full damage of 75, which was advertised in the tooltip, because they're all sharing the damage. So in this way, it actually works just like Blizzard from the Archmage, in that simultaneous units being hit will spread damage in order to fulfill the unit max damage cap. The conclusion in plain text here is as follows. If you're looking to deal maximum damage on certain targets, make sure not to hit too many other targets at the same time. But otherwise, you can just use Carrion Swarm and the game will compute how much damage should be dealt to units accordingly to when they're being hit. Carrion Swarm level 2 and 3 also work along the same principles in terms of the spreading and the order of being hit. Doing the deep dive of these nerdy numbers finally helped me to understand why sometimes when I Carrion Swarm flying machines, I could hit sometimes 6 units, sometimes 7, sometimes 8. I couldn't figure out the consistency why some were taking more damage than others, but now I finally get it, and hopefully so do you. Let's go to his second ability. This is a shorter section, don't worry. Sleep allows the Dreadlord to set a unit or a hero into a state of inactivity very akin to a stun. It puts them asleep. It can do so from a range of 800, which is the same as an Orcish Watchtower attack range. It is a very long period of stun effect that makes the enemy user unable to control the unit. But the unit can be woken up via enemy or friendly damage. Performing an attack on your own sleeping unit saves it from its spell, but not before the 2-second invulnerability period of sleep has passed, as you can see here. This invulnerability duration doesn't go above 2 seconds, even if you pick additional attribute points into the sleep spell. So both the first level of sleep as well as the last ability, the third level of sleep, has the same counter from an opponent, which is to perform an auto attack on the self after 2 seconds. Because of this, sleep is often not worth it beyond the first point, and we typically pick sleep as a value point. Sleep improves in mana cost, and for the rest the cooldown and the invulnerability period remain the same. It also goes up in duration, but because the counterplay is relatively simple, the better an opponent is, the worse extra points in sleep are. You're just saving a little bit of mana, so it is maybe one of the biggest value points in the game, together with Lich's Frost Armor. Sleep is best known for allowing an undead player to surround enemy units and heroes to subsequently kill them off. High level sleep can also be spammed on enemy Wind Riders and Chimera, and the worse your opponents are, the less good they're going to be at waking them up, since this requires manual labor. Forcing an opponent to spend valuable damage and APM to wake up each one by one might be too much of a burden on their APM and mental presence of mind, and so you might get a lot of value on sleeping high value enemy targets. Keep in mind that enemy Dispel can also take care of sleep, provided it's done after the invulnerability period, or I believe it removes the sleep but they won't become active yet. Dispel does work, but auto-abolish Dryad doesn't immediately remove sleep, it has to be done manually. Sleep can also be used to close the small window of opportunity where an enemy wants to use a safe spell, such as Staff of Preservation, Staff of Sanctuary, Town Portal Scroll, or healing an enemy hero with his Death Coil or Holy Light to save another one. So if I'm blowing up the first hero in front of me and there's a hero behind them that can save them, maybe I'll sleep that one and then focus all my damage on the front hero during just the right time. It is quite a useful tactical spell in this way. Unlike Bane's Sleep, which is a hero in Dota 2, Sleep cannot be cast on one of your own units to use the 2-second invulnerability window in order to try and save them from large damage nukes. The third and final ability for Dreadlord outside of the ult is the Vampiric Aura. Vampiric Aura allows melee heroes and units around the Dreadlord to gain health from performing basic auto attacks on enemy units. This includes the Dreadlord himself, as well as any gargoyles performing air-to-air attacks. The HP gain equals to 20%, 35% and 50% of the post-mitigation damage being dealt. That means you'll be able to steal more HP from units that have lower armor rather than units or heroes that have higher armor. The area of effect for Vampiric Aura to be applied to units around the Dreadlord is 900 range, which is 100 more than the Watchtower Orc attack range. The lifesteal is percentage based and is taken from post-mitigation damage. The target's armor does matter. Attack upgrades help boost your units' damage, as well as items on heroes boosting your damage. Therefore, offense equals defense, since they help heal you up via Vampiric. If you miss an attack because of curse or evasion, then there will not be a lifesteal effect. Lifesteal also works on aggressive buildings that are mobile, like all the Night Elf Ancients and the Tree of Life. It does not work on stationary aggressive buildings, like burrows and towers. Despite the impressive lifesteal numbers, Vampiric Aura is actually not super valued in the average undead game, because undead tends to rely heavily on Crypt Fiends, Destroyers and Statues, as well as the Lich for damage. None of these benefit from melee lifesteal. However, in the right game, it can be a massive source of self-sustaining power, in conjunction with things like Heal Scroll, Unholy Aura, Standing on Blight, as well as Statue Healing. Finally, his ultimate ability, Inferno. Possibly the best ultimate in the game, or top 5 if not, alongside with maybe things like Mass Teleport, Charm, Metamorphosis and Transmute. Inferno impacts upon a targeted casting location after a 1-second delay. This ultimate spell stuns any units hit upon impact for 4 seconds. Heroes for 2 seconds, and summons a very good unit at the crater site, namely the Infernal. The Infernal has 1500 health, 6 armor, 320 move speed, which is the same as a baseline Demon Hunter, 49 to 60 damage of the Chaos damage type. Chaos damage type ignores all armor types, which means that it neither does bonus or reduced damage. In practice and plain text, to make it simple for you, this mostly means more damage than you would expect against enemy heroes and buildings. He has a permanent immolation aura of 10 DPS. Infernal is also equipped with resistance skin, which means it cannot be eaten by a Kodo beast. It has spell immunity, which means it cannot be hit or targeted by any spells. And it's magic immune, which means it can't be hurt by magical attacks like frostworms, chimera, sorceresses, witch doctors, etc. He can be slowed by Dryad Slow Poison, which has a magic immunity piercing effect. He can also be hit by critical strike and bash, so some of these passives do work against it. But overall, it's very hard to reliably deal with the Infernal, and it can even be lifestealing itself via Vampiric Aura as it is melee. And it can be death coiled by a Death Knight in order to keep it alive. It is a very powerful unit. Let's go to the stat sheet for the Dreadlord. Starting at the beginning. Dreadlord is a strength hero, which makes him one of 3 strength heroes from the Undead Altar of Darkness. The only other hero being the Lich with intelligence. Undead doesn't have an agility hero. Nonetheless, he is described as a cunning hero in the flavor text. Normally, that's an adjective that is reserved only for all the agility heroes in the games, in all the other flavor texts. Blade Master, Firelord, Priestess of the Moon, Demon Hunter, Warden, they're all described as cunning heroes. This makes me feel like Blizzard, pre-release of the game, had once imagined Dreadlord might be an agility hero, which makes sense considering his melee vampiric action. But perhaps they felt it would be too strong in terms of balance if he started attacking very fast and so damagingly with all the benefits of lifesteal. This is also why lifesteal is so good on a hero like Demon Hunter and Blade Master, so I think it's a balanced reason, and he was switched from agility to strength. He starts with 20 strength with a 2.5 strength gain per level, 16 agility with a 1 agility gain per level, which is the lowest attribute gain I've seen on any hero in any stat so far. He has 18 intelligence with a 2.5 intelligence stat gain, which is really quite good, and a basic cooldown time of 1.8. This means that Dreadlord has a very good attack speed modifier, which makes him rank 5 out of 24 heroes that exist in Warcraft 3, which makes Dreadlord the highest attack speed user among all the strength heroes. So giving Gloves of Haste to Dreadlord is actually very good, all the more so when you have a Vampiric Aura. He has an attack range of 100, which is melee, sight range is standard 1800/800 at night, 300 movement speed, which makes him average and slower than agility heroes. He has 3 armor at level 1, to be exact 3.33. He has a starting damage of 22 to 32, which is not very high, a starting HP of 600, which is more than agi heroes but worse than most strength heroes, with a health gain of 1 per second, and 3 per second when he's standing on Blight, which is the unique undead benefit of getting 2 bonus HP per second when standing on the black ground. Starting mana is 270 with a mana regeneration of 0.91. Alright, let's dive a little deeper into Dreadlord's detailed hero use cases. Dreadlord is a melee strength hero that lacks the level of tankiness of some of the other melee strength heroes, such as the Pit Lord, the Crypt Lord, and the Tauren Chieftain. Despite being strength based and having a flavor text and BCD that suggests agility and attack speed enhancement being the way to go, he is mostly leveraged in high level games as a spellcaster. And getting more mana on him means more sleep spam and more carrion swarm spam. His intelligence scaling is some of the highest that I've seen in attribute scaling, especially for a strength hero, and his starting mana is relatively high for a strength hero. For a long time, Dreadlord has been underpowered, as he received some hefty nerfs recently back in 2003. Then soon after, in 2018, Dreadlord received numerous buffs that helped make him a much more competitive choice. Dreadlord is the original fast expansion enabler. While Undead may have a weaker army than human in the early game, Undeads can use and leverage sleep surrounds on enemy heroes to threaten the heroes away. In fact, the very threat of sleep often makes humans give a Dreadlord player wide berth with their Archmage, reducing the pressure on the Undead of the threat of getting their expansion cancelled. Should an enemy hero blunder too close after all, expect a rapid sleep surround to force a kill or to force out a town portal on the hero. Even orcs can struggle to stop a Dreadlord fast expansion ever since the sleep mana cost was buffed and lowered in April of 2018. Despite a Blade Master having Windwalk, which could free you from a sleep surround, Orc has to be careful not to waste their mana too quickly to escape sleep surrounds, as it's pretty much a tit for tat sleep for Windwalk, spamming spells to threaten the Blade Master away while surrounding him. Dreadlord as a second hero is very uncommon, but as a third hero sees some occasional limited play. As mentioned, it's usually to go up against a human with their mechanicals or to enable stronger gargoyles in the Undead versus Night Elf matchup to combat hippogriffs. Here are some standard skill builds. There aren't that many. I identified just 2 major ones. The first one is standard. You start with sleep level 1 in order to sleep one of the creeps at the expansion, either the Ogre Mage that summons Bloodlust or the Priest that summons Inner Fire and Sleep. You take down the creeps, put down a Ziggurat on the Sacrificial Skull, and then you put down the Gold Mine and you use Sleep to threaten away enemy units and heroes. After picking Sleep level 1, you may hold on to your skill points to see which one you want to go next, but generally the dream is to go Carrion Swarm. So it's Sleep at level 1, then Carrion Swarm, then you take a value point in Vampiric Aura to give the 20% lifesteal, also because we don't really value Sleep all that much. You won't be casting Sleep very often at level 4+. It's mostly down to the Carrion Swarm spam, but you can use it as a threat occasionally to get a surround if you see an opportunity. So we're 1-1 in skill build. At the 5th level of the Dreadlord, we take another Carrion Swarm to max it out, and then the ult at level 6. Then at level 7, you could either take Sleep again or Vampiric Aura. I tend to probably go for Vampiric Aura because by now we have Infernal, which means Infernal will be lifestealing more, and that might be worth more than a Sleep, which may get cancelled soon after anyway. The second major ability build is when mana is limited. I tend to go for this when I get mana burned by a Demon Hunter a lot. I start with Sleep at level 1, then I pick 2 points in Vampiric Aura, then I'll actually go for another point in Sleep. Remember, mana is limited, so getting a lower mana cast on Sleep is actually quite useful. And we can't cast double spells that cost mana anyway, Sleep plus Sea Swarm, because we're getting mana burned frequently. So Sleep, double Vamp, then Sleep, then Vamp again at level 3. We can use that for heroes and for ghouls and for abominations and to a degree for skeletons in order to sustain ourselves up a little bit when fighting the Night Elf army. Then at level 6, obviously Infernal, and then at level 7 we finish up with Sleep. When Dreadlord is made as a third hero instead of a first, which is what these builds were about, it's all situational. All 3 starting abilities can be good, it really comes down to what you need at the time. Carrion Swarm would be to kill flying machines and siege engines, Sleep to disable or surround enemy key heroes, and Vampiric Aura to essentially pay 400 for the hero in order to have a mobile Scourge Bone Chimes, which is the item name that gives you Vampiric Aura. Dreadlord is a relatively common Book of Retraining user. Usually you'll use a Book of Retraining to recalibrate away from Sleep and into max points of Carrion Swarm and Vampiric, after initially using Sleep to do early game surrounds and picking off heroes and units. You can also retrain away from Vampiric Aura when you've realized that during most of the game you have been gravitating towards ranged units only. Having any points in Vamp while you're mostly ranged is kind of useless, so you could reskill to full points in Sleep and Carrion Swarm, prioritizing Carrion Swarm. How to get the most out of your Dreadlord in terms of playstyle, fighting and items. So, is there a bigger emphasis on creeping or aggression? Well, a Dreadlord first is never and should never be playing from one base. I hope that much is clear by now. The goal is to secure an early expansion and then bring the game back to normal by going for the more regular heroes of Death Knight 2nd and Lich 3rd. Alternatively, you could try to leverage an early Infernal and go full Dreadlord mode, in which case you will go solo hero, you'll tower up your 2 bases a bit, you make whatever army you need to live and apply pressure, and get such items such as Invisibility Potion, Boots of Speed, Staff of Teleport, leverage the Zeppelin from the Goblin Laboratory, and also use ghouls and gargoyles to apply pressure and do guerrilla warfare. All this is to reach level 6 as quickly as possible in order to drop that hot molten rock of demonic and fell omnipotence on your foes' heads, the Infernal. After establishing an expansion, Dreadlord usually plays the opponent, not the map. While creeping is valuable and helps the Dreadlord, it's usually more valuable to enhance your economic advantage by killing enemy peasants with Carrion Swarm. Vampiric-focused gameplay that just tries to creep with ghouls is certainly powerful, but it lacks importance and priority compared to defending your expansion, denying an opponent creeping momentum, and denying an opponent a seamless economic tech route to high tier units. You have to keep remembering while playing Dreadlord that he is still an underdog hero pick. Despite everything he brings, by going Dreadlord, you invest in the opportunity cost, which is now not invested in a Death Knight that brings speed aura and healing via coil, or a Lich with high level area of effect spell, Frost Nova, that also reduces enemy movement speed and attack speed. So, despite everything that he brings, he's worse at standard than the Death Knight and Lich. So it's important to disrupt an opponent rather than sit back in luxury and complacency, if that makes sense. And if it doesn't make sense, it's still true what I said. So just believe me. How to use in battle. Usually you just attack the Dreadlord into combat by using an A left click, A being the hotkey for attack, and attack move being the command where you send a unit forward, but it will automatically engage and start attacking when it meets an enemy. You start a fight with A move. He's tanky enough usually not to be blown up in 1 second. You cast Sleep on the enemy main hero as often as you have the mental acuity in order to do it. And if you're spec'd into Carrion Swarm, cast it on the lowest max HP cluster of enemy units, such as priests and sorceresses. Sometimes it's necessary to move a bit, foregoing some basic attacks, in favor of a more optimal Carrion Swarm angling. Which items does the Dreadlord like to have? Boots of speed. He only has 300 movement speed, slower than the 320 movement speed that agility heroes have, and he's slower than an Archmage. And this feels painfully obvious, especially in the early game. The bonus money that Dreadlord gets from such an early expansion should be invested most ASAPly as possible, you could say, into a Boots of speed. He also likes a Staff of Teleportation, which will allow him to do economic back and forth harassment play, both attacking and defending. Dreadlord is a fan of the Belt of Giant Strength +6, as it gives him survivability and a damage boost. And for the Dreadlord, damage sometimes also is lifesteal. He likes the Circlet of Nobility, is a fantastic hero to give a all stat item to. Any of the high level and low level stat distribution items that give 2 or 3 stats are great for him. All 3 attributes are super required. Any strength hero loves the armor from agility. He's a great agility user for attack speed, as we established, and he likes the survivability from strength as well as the spellcasting ability from intelligence. And of course he likes any intelligence items like mantle, robe, pendant and Sobi mask. When it comes to consumables, Dreadlord likes the following 4 items. Scroll of Town Portal for the macro play. Heal Scroll, as Dreadlord is often accompanied by ghouls and gargoyles, which are numerous but low health. Heal Scroll doesn't make any discrimination for how many units it can heal. It will heal as many as are around the Dreadlord. That means Heal Scroll is more effective generally on many small units than a few big ones. So Dreadlord likes Heal Scroll. Then there's Rod of Necromancy to help him creep and to fight, and also of course mana potions for more spell spamming in fights, and even not in fights, just killing peasants. Which buffs are good on the Dreadlord? Well, he likes Unholy Frenzy. It's a little bit of an underdog buff that not a lot of people are talking about. They don't want you to know about the Unholy Frenzy buff on Dreadlord. It's too powerful, but I'm gonna tell you so you can abuse it. Why is Unholy Frenzy good on Dreadlord? Well, he has a rank 5 BCD, basic cooldown timing for attack speed, and the fact that he lifesteals from his auto attacks, that makes him quite good at getting bonus auto attack damage. And Unholy Frenzy has a degeneration effect, 3 damage per second, and with Vamp, he doesn't really care too much about that. As a melee hero, he likes to get the buff of a Death Coil from an allied Death Knight. So DK second is quite useful to heal him up when he's frontlining. I've told you how to dominate with the Dreadlord, but what if Dreadlord is your opponent and you want to counter him? Here's a couple of tips on how to deal with him on the micro and the macro level. In combat, you can use Heal Scrolls to out-heal Carrion Swarm damage. Heal Scroll heals 150 to everyone around, and Carrion Swarm does 75, 125 or 200 damage. So on average, a Heal Scroll will out-heal 1 Carrion Swarm. You can carry multiple ones against a Dreadlord with a lot of mana. When the Dreadlord sleeps any of your units or heroes, you can perform auto attacks on those sleeping units to wake them up as quickly as possible. Just be sure to stop auto-attacking your hero or unit once it's woken up. I have forgotten about this in the past, and it is very painful to see the replay and notice that one of your heroes was constantly attacking your other hero. When choosing a unit to wake up someone from a sleep, try to use the fastest attack point animation so that it happens early, and use the lowest damage attack so you don't hurt yourself too bad when you do it. So you would sooner use a Farseer than a Tauren Chieftain to wake someone up. You can also counter surround one of your own units or heroes anytime there is a sleep surround attempt. Just like an enemy can surround your unit, you can surround your unit. And then you can try to wriggle the unit out of the surround, or at least prevent surface area for that unit to be attacked a lot. This is really a skill issue. If an opponent is better at surrounding you than you are at surrounding you, you should do some practice surrounding you in a single player game. Dreadlord is not the tankiest, so any player can also decide to focus the Dreadlord a lot in battle in order to reduce his effectiveness and spell spamming. Orcs, for instance, can consider focusing Dreadlord with abilities such as Wolves, Chain Lightning, Critical Strike, Hex and War Stomp, because he's not that tanky. On the macro game perspective, humans should get 1 Arcane Tower per base in order to dissuade Dreadlords from getting too near to do Carrion Swarm attacks on peasants. Upon scouting that you're against the Dreadlord, prepare for aggressive subsequent unit attacks after the undead gets an expansion. This could be in the form of ghoul run-bys and gargoyle harassment, as well as the Dreadlord trying to angle in for some Carrion Swarms. An empty mana Dreadlord, while the undead is still on tier 1, is not that threatening, so if undead has been headbanging a little bit too hard, you should use the hangover of him being unable to do anything, as undeads cannot buy mana at tier 1. Neither statue or mana potion are available. If you notice the Dreadlord is well spent, be sure to be quite aggressive and daring with your units, be it Farseer and Grunts or Archmage and Footman. You can start applying some pressure back on their acolytes and ghouls using wolves and water elementals. If an orc player lets an undead get away with a fast expansion, don't panic too much. It's amazing how long orc can actually survive against the subpar Dreadlord compared to a DK Lich combination, just trying to leverage map control and a superior early army that has a higher technology tier. So long as you play for map control, you can make up for a lot of them having double income just by picking off units every now and then, taking contested creep camps, preventing them from creeping, stealing the creeps on their side of the map, and occasionally threatening a head-on assault to force enemy towers to be made. Eventually you can throw up a counter expansion, but you shouldn't rush things because you'll make yourself weak during a time where you as an orc actually are supposed to have the upper hand against a Dreadlord player with just a couple of ghouls. For undead, if in an undead mirror, if an enemy plays Dreadlord, try to level up your Lich, as Frost Nova against no Frost Nova is a massive advantage in combat. Elves do not face Dreadlords often, but if they do and you started with Demon, Manaborn and Immolation should be able to deal with the Dreadlord and the ghouls pretty well. They are some of his greatest counters. Warden also does great, as her blink allows her to escape from the clutches of a sleep surround, and Fan of Knives does devastating damage against ghouls. We get to the final section of tricks and special interactions. I've only found 4 special interactions, as the Dreadlord is a relatively straightforward hero. One trick you can do, which I've seen in the past and I've played against, is if you find an enemy isolated hero, you can spam sleep on it and alternate it with direct damage spells. If you have a DK Lich Dreadlord combination, and there's been a Blade Master that's been getting away from you all the time, even though you reveal him with Shade or Dust, because you do a Coil Nova and then he runs, this might help. Coil Nova a revealed Blade Master, and then as the damage has been dealt by those spells, quickly cast the sleep. You'll then wait for your Coil and Nova to come back off of cooldown, and you'll Coil Nova him again, and once those are done, sleep again, rinse and repeat. Be sure not to cast sleep too early, because it can actually block the damage point of Coil, but this is a great way to do a lot of follow-up spell damage on a single hero, and it could be game winning. The next trick is to sleep a saver hero. You can prevent Holy Light, Healing Wave, Staff of Preservation, Town Portal and Staff of Sanctuary to kill the rest of the army or heroes. Sleep is a interrupter of channels, so you can stop Mass Teleportation, Staff of Teleportation, channel ultimates like Tranquility and Big Bad Voodoo, and this may in fact be a reason sometimes to pick Dreadlord as a third hero when you're against higher level enemy heroes and they're closing in on their channeling ults. And for the fourth trick, it's mostly just how to leverage Carrion Swarm effectively. Carrion Swarm can reach much farther than what it seems like if you were to target a unit. By targeting the ground, you will simply cast it in that direction and Sea Swarm will go as far as it can. If you try to target an enemy unit with Carrion Swarm, your Dreadlord will walk up unnecessarily nearby in order to cast the Carrion Swarm on that unit with a range of like 600-700, which is the same range as an Archmage can attack almost. But it can reach much further than that. So cast it from further. Alright, that was the Dreadlord Spotlight. I hope you enjoyed this and learned a little bit. And I hope I didn't cast sleep on you during some of the numbers sections. So far I've done the Blade Master Hero Spotlight, the Pit Lord, the Archmage, the Warden, and now we've done the Dreadlord. All are in a playlist on this channel. There are 19 heroes left undone. If I don't end up finishing this series, which hero do you think absolutely must be covered before it is discontinued? You never know. If you do want me to finish the series, consider liking, commenting, subscribing to this channel and sharing this video with your friends who may want to be learning Warcraft 3. And I will feel greatly encouraged to try and continue from that. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video here on Grubby Talks. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.